Rich can't stand still.
I can't
stand still.
Too exciting.
Yeah.
Too exciting to be in a room full of with dedicated progressives. A lot of people in the world sit in their asses and don't do anything. You're not those people. So I would like to give you a hand. And I also want to thank Indivisible for inviting me to share my meager knowledge on some of this stuff that you're going to do. So just a couple of things. First of all, this is not a lecture. It's not meant to be a lecture. I promise not to drone on for too long. If you have questions as we move forward or comments that you want to make, raise your hand. We'll call on you, and we'll go from there. So this is not learning by rote. There's also some very talented folks in the audience that have a great deal of political experience on their own. If I overlook something, which is likely, or understate something, which is also likely, please feel free to chime in and help me out, and I fully expect Peter to do that as well. Okay, so everybody saw the big celebration of Republicans and Trump after I haven't seen that many old white guys in one place. Somewhere there's people sitting in an elk club looking around going, where is everybody? I stole that from Bill Maher, by the way. That's not original. Okay, so, yes.
I found on one of my websites, Facebook people, they're calling them worms. White, old Republican men.
The worm turns. Okay, so let's start by being interactive. Who here has been a candidate before? Raise your hand, please. Yes, Mr. Goldman is definitely been a candidate. And how many of you have been on a campaign staff before? Cool, very nice. Impressive. And for how many of you is this your first real campaign rodeo? And that's the most impressive of all. So thank you for stepping out and being willing to take a chance and make a difference. I want to start by going slightly off topic for just a second. Everybody knows who Harry Truman was, right? If anybody in this room doesn't know who Harry Truman was, don't raise your hand. So when Harry Truman's biographer was interviewing him, he asked him a question, and he said, Mr. President, the campaign slogan, "Give 'em hell, Harry," where did that come from? And he never answered the question directly. But he said, you know, I never gave people hell. I just told them the truth, and they thought it was hell. So I'm going to give you about 1 minute of that, and then we're going to switch back. You picked a really easy one. You know, this shouldn't be that hard. You're taking on a congressman who's been in office for 18 years. 9 terms to build influence and power, which he has done very, very well. I was really happy to hear Peter reference Jack Oman. Jack is one of my best friends, one of my oldest friends. I remember having that very conversation with Greg Walden on Greg Walden back in the 80s and the 90s. The guy has won the last election, as Peter will attest to. He's won every election, in many cases by 70% or more.
Yeah.
His approval rating, which hopefully you guys have managed to drive down significantly, at the last poll was almost 70%. It was in the high 60s. He spends $14 million plus on every single election. And you can say that that is an obscene amount of money. It is. And we need to get corporate money out of politics. We do. But the reality is, if you can't raise at least a third of that much money in this campaign, that candidate has no chance. And that is just the hard, cold facts. And to cap it all off, he's the former head of the Republican National Congressional Campaign Committee. That guy's got more chits, favors, and IOUs in his pocket than you and I can even begin to imagine. So this guy is totally stacked. He is the top of the Republican power structure. And that is compounded by the fact that there is not a strong farm team in place to field a candidate to run against him. So this is my 30-second digression. What that means is you may have to try to parachute somebody into Congress who does not have a lot of political experience. The success rate on that is less than 3%. It's not impossible, but go into it with open eyes. Politics is a blood sport, and it's a zero-sum game. There is a winner and there is a loser. And this is going to be the fight of your life. So fix that next time. Talk to some of the young elected progressives that are in this room right now, like Sarah Westover and the people from Rogue Action, who are actually working to establish the farm team. It's got to be a two-pronged structure. Taking on Greg Walden and making him uncomfortable and trying to defeat him is entirely laudable and respectable, and I encourage you to do it. Don't ignore the local stuff. 44% of all congressmen and congresswomen sitting right now at one time were state senators. Being a state senator is used as a platform, a springboard into Congress. You got a Senate seat coming up in this area, in this district, in this community in 2018. Don't ignore that. School board, water districts, transportation boards, that's where it starts. Organize, train, empower for the long term, not just for the short term. Yes, sir.
There are 900 elected Democrats in CD2 in these non-partisan offices. They're hidden. They don't proclaim themselves as Democrats, but they're there.
Good.
Good we start from.
Yeah, that's a good start.
I'm sorry, I don't know what that acronym means.
Congressional District 2. And yet the Jackson County Board of Commissioners is filled with knuckle-dragging rednecks, right?
Yep.
So, anyway. Okay, so, by the way, I want to mention that, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry.
The 14 million that you referenced, when I looked at the FEC records, I saw 3 million. $1 million in reserve, $1 million he spent on other candidates, and $1 million he spent on uncontested election CD2.
I got those numbers directly from directly off of the reported website. Did he not spend $14 million in his last election?
3.2, I think.
That's what I saw.
Yeah.
Well, I made you.
That's what I saw.
Thank you for writing. You're going to have to raise $1 million. Okay, so, but remember something. Remember something. If Greg Walden thinks he needs to raise $20 million to beat your candidate, he's going to raise $20 million to beat your candidate, and he'll do it with a few phone calls. So just keep that in mind. So beating Walden is not impossible at all. It is doable, but it's going to take political skills and an experienced staff that knows what they're doing. It's going to take flawless execution of a detailed campaign plan and tactics to support it. We're going to talk about both of those things in just a second. It's going to take millions of dollars to be competitive in this race, and it is going to take exceptional message discipline at all levels, especially in the field. Because what you're going to be trying to do is you're going to be trying to convince people who voted for Greg Walden last time not to. So, of course, my slides are out of order. I didn't. I know. Okay. So who can tell me the difference between strategy and tactics? Raise your hand, please. Please.
I think strategy is more of an overall plan, and tactics are little things that you do. Yeah.
Anyone else?
So strategy is the plan for your goal, and tactics is how you do it.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and both those answers are correct. That's absolutely true. So we presume that the strategy and the campaign plan is not yet in place for this campaign, right? Because it hasn't been designed yet. Presumably there's not a staff. Perhaps you have identified a candidate, but they're not here today. So without a campaign plan, there's still several things that we can do. What's the campaign objective? Anyone, just blurt it out. What's the objective?
Sorry.
And what do you think? What do you think it will take to beat Greg Walden? One sentence from different folks.
Determination.
Say that again, please.
In one sentence, what do you think it'll take to beat Greg Walden?
A lot of miracles.
A great candidate.
The right message.
Engaging the 40% who didn't vote and are most affected by what's happening.
Yeah.
Organizing.
Yes.
Organizing. Thank you. Good. Thank you very, very much. Organizing. Okay, so up here we see essentially the difference between strategy and tactics, and it's really very, very simple. Effective strategies are consistent. Good tactics create surprises. Strategy is durable, predictable. It is the campaign plan. That is what is set out at the very, very beginning, and everything that happens in the campaign after that, from message to tactics, is meant to support that campaign plan. So, bit of a hole right now because there's not a campaign plan, but we can absolutely move forward from there. All I have to do, once again, is find the right slide. And I will. Okay. So what that really means, as I mentioned before, is convincing people who voted for Greg Walden last time not to, right? I mean, 70% of people in this district voted for Greg Walden. He carried every single county in the last election. So speaking to the choir is not going to make that, yes?
Okay, I don't know, in this district, what is the breakdown between registered Democrats and Republicans in this district?
Let's ask some electeds. Sarah, would you like to answer that question?
I actually don't know offhand, Ron.
What was the question?
What's the breakdown in CD2 between Democrats and Republicans registered?
It's not as big as you would think. It's about 30% Democrat, 40% Republican, and the rest are non-affiliated.
So 30 Democrat, 40 Republican,
32, 40.
40 Republican, and then non-affiliated?
The problem with that number is that if you look over the last several elections, those non-affiliated people have been voting Republican by a factor of about 70%. Or voting for a third party, right? So they're not necessarily your friends, yes.
And what is the percentage of voters that actually are voting? Do we have a?
It varies from election cycle to election cycle, and it varies from race to race. So last year you had about 80% turnout. Maybe 60% actually voted in the congressional, or a little high 65, and much fewer as you go down the ballot.
Okay, so.
Can I answer that question
Please.
directly? So one of my colleagues in Bend actually put together the specific numbers. We have 135,000 registered Democrats in ORD2. We have 174,000 registered Republicans. We have 130,000 non-affiliated. Last year, we had 252,000 vote for Walden, which means Walden captured Republicans, non-affiliated, and Democrats. We had 100,000 vote for Jim Crary, and we had 124 who didn't vote. So, and I have those charts printed out. They're in my car, and I walked here today. So I apologize.
Organization.
But hey, I got it on my phone. Happily share that. And my colleague also broke it down by county. So we have all of that information granular.
And beautiful graphs.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And very, she's a landscape architect. It's very pretty. And I promise I'll bring the hard copies tomorrow so we can share them around.
And can we share the electronic version?
I will double check with her tonight and see if I can't imagine that she would have any problem with that. But I think one of the questions, or one of the comments that you made is that 70% of our district voted for Greg Walden, and that's not accurate. 70% of people who voted.
Yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
Far more people did not vote than voted for Jim Crary. And Jim Crary actually got more votes than people expected and did better against Greg Walden than most people thought. Without a campaign. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
And also, as of November 7th of last year, 40,000 people who were registered in CD2 who have never voted. They're in motor voter registration.
That's right.
Those are people who are not habitual voters for Walden, and they're really up for grabs.
Okay.
Could we ask people who speak to say your name,
Sure.
so we'll be able to?
I'm the voice at the back. I'm Ron Morgan. I'm from the Democratic Party of Oregon.
Great.
And to stand.
I'm Lisa Flexner. I'm from Bend with Action Together Oregon, Central Oregon.
Okay. So, Greg Walden is going to be a tough target, right? Is there anyone here who disagrees with the fact that if we are going to beat Greg Walden, you're going to have to at least convince some of the people who voted for him last time not to?
Right.
Okay. So let's talk about what those tactics would look like. What do you think tactics, just think about it for a second. So you're going to try to convince people who voted for Greg Walden last time not to. What tactics can make that a reality? What do you think? Let's talk.
Tying to that health plan.
I'm sorry?
Common ground.
Tying to that health plan.
Let's raise our hands. It'll be easier that way, please.
Well, I think we need to tie him to this health plan. I mean,
Yes.
you turn on the 5 o'clock news
Yep.
and he's there behind the
So-
president, he's there pushing those people.
So the connection to ACA
Yeah.
and the effects on the local communities,
Yeah, I
right?
think so.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
We need somebody that the people, I'm in Klamath, that people can relate to, that they'll swallow. It can't be somebody who's
Right.
super liberal looking. or
You need the equivalent of a Rob Quist for the second, from Montana, for the
Yeah.
second congressional district, right?
somebody-
By the way, if you've got any extra time, I'd encourage you, if you want to learn something about campaigns, go to Montana and knock on doors for Rob Quist for a weekend or two. And he needs the help, and it's a very, very worthy effort.
So how do we keep it at the front of the mind, this healthcare issue? So the Supreme Court issue last year, they stole the Supreme Court seat, and it was, and grossly stole it. I'm from Iowa. I'm sorry. And,
It's okay, you used to be pretty good.
and, but it fell off of the presidential race, and it seemed to be such an important thing, and it could have been used as a message. And I'm afraid that we're going to lose this healthcare momentum by the time the November elections come around. So how do we
Take it, Peter.
I think there's a difference, and I'm sure it fell off the presidential campaign because it just wasn't polling. People weren't paying attention to it. And the campaigns had that data saying, the guy who lives over there doesn't really care that much, isn't following the Supreme Court seat. They're not really conscious of what that means. But healthcare is immediate. Healthcare impacts your family and your kids and your neighbors. And so that personal connection is more powerful connection. So I'm doubting that will drop off of the, I think the 2018 campaign, as is mentioned, will be about this issue. And it will be the major issue.
What are other tactics we might use to unseat one?
Please remember to say your name and where you're from, because we all want to get to know you.
Please.
stand up?
And standing up would help. There you go.
Tim Shekel, I'm from the Dalles. I think a really important thing to do is link Greg Walden to the Trump agenda.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, even people who voted for Trump, are saying, oh shit, I made a big mistake. And the more ridiculous and the more absurd that administration becomes, the stronger. Even when you see Greg Walden in his body language, he's kind of there, but he's kind of conflicted. He's a
That's
man.
because he knows he's about to get the crap beat out of
He
him.
knows. I think the more we link him to the radical, absurd, inhumane nature of this beast, that's that's his weak spot.
Wendy Van Camp Medford. Will we or can we get polling data for that at that period so that we'll know what the
Let's stay on tactics for a moment if we can. Let's talk about the specific tactics that we can use against Greg Walden, please.
I'm Sarah Kellums, I'm from Hood River. I'm interested in making connections with our Latino community and encouraging them to come out to vote.
And that is a core tactic, and it's key, and it's always key. I've been running campaigns in the Central Valley of California for the last 6 years, and it's really, really tough, and it's really, really critical. I mean, that is a huge resource that is available to us, but you've got to have the right messenger, which is what I'm going to talk about.
We do have two Latino recently elected members to our Hood River Democrats. So that's really
Cool, good move.
I'm sorry, I can't hear
You
you.
can't hear her.
John Nelson, the Dallas. I think we need to link the Trump policies to, we need to be able to explain how those policies are affecting Oregonians, especially in the rural areas, and right down to specifics, how it's going to affect individuals and families.
Yep. I think it's a great point.
So just to repeat this, right, because you didn't hear, in the back, the comment was we need to bring the Latino voters into active.
Yeah, I'm Sid Snyder from Bend, the local seniority raising Cain. I think part of what we need, it's really hard to turn people who have voted.
Sure, it is.
I mean, that's a tough thing to do.
It is.
But I think one of the ways that I see my wife's run campaigns before, so I've watched some of these, is to get people who look like and sound like those people to tell personal stories.
Thank you. Perfect. That is a great statement, and that is a great segue into what I wanted to point out, where I wanted to sort of take this. This is a Midwest Academy strategy journey. I'm a student of the Midwest Academy. I use it on all of my campaigns, whether they're political or environmental or whatever. And what a strategy chart does is it makes you focus your attention on your goals, your allies, your targets, and the tactics that you're going to use to do that. In my opinion, there's been some great comments here. But that last comment I think is really at the core of this. You have to find out how to talk to these people yourselves, and you have to find messengers to message for you to those people. There are a handful of people in each community, in each town, that have vast influence over that community. Sometimes they're clergy, sometimes they're ER docs, sometimes they're an elected official. You've got to make friends with those people. And it's going to take time. It's not going to be one conversation, and you're going to have to pull punches. We are a bunch of wild-eyed progressives. The people that you are going to try to talk into changing their votes are not. So back to the other points that I made, you got to tie it directly back to the impacts of Greg Walden's votes and Donald Trump's policies on rural Oregon. Healthcare is a really obvious one. I mean, frankly, I would find the most broken family I could find with the sickest kids, and I would put them on a corner lot every single day with signs explaining to people and making them look at what the effects of gutting the Affordable Health Care Act would be. So the health care is one strong wedge, and we can play that, and we will certainly play that. What else is Trump doing right now that Greg Walden is supporting by association that would also backfire in rural Oregon in CD2?
Immigration.
Yeah, immigration is one, but I think...
Name and place where you're from.
Hang on. Oh, sorry.
Josh Berger, Sisters, Oregon. And
I was married there, by the way.
Mazel tov. I was thinking of BLM lands and the selling off and mineral extraction. This is a community, Oregon District 2 is, whether you're a hunter or whether you're a hiker, you can agree that we like the outdoors, and that's an Oregon value. And I think that he is undermining those Oregon values by allowing this stuff to be sold off.
Absolutely, and I think there's a fine line there. You've got to, remember you're in a rural county. People in Grant County might think that mining is actually a pretty damn good idea. Yeah. And they might think that enhanced timber forest is a damn good idea, but what they won't agree with is that those federal lands should be sold off.
But here's another way to think about it, though. It's like everybody likes clean air, everybody likes clean water, so when you got the EPA, they're framing these things in a way like they say burdensome regulations, but that's a bad framing. Like if we were to say, protection, right? Environmental protection as opposed to burdensome regulation.
So the language is going to be very important. Yeah. Because if you pull the word EPA in the 2nd Congressional District, the numbers are not going to come back very positive. Right. They're just not. Please.
Maury from Ashland, Oregon. I really think that with the pipeline and everything else, that the big thing is eminent domain. Coming onto somebody's personal property and telling them what they are going to do is something that all people in Oregon are against. And so I think that's a really big one. And I also think immigration, because the Latino community is very concerned, and some are very afraid of what is going on with deportation and detention. So I think those two things, for the Latin community to vote and for our redneck community, and I'm so glad to see people from the Dulles, and these are people that can go into those communities.
Stop calling it a
I'm so glad to see them because they know their community and they can reach out for the people that can count. So thank you for being here.
Let's go, Alice, and then I'm sorry, and you had your hand up longer than
I'm Karen, I'm from Ashland. I think that the tax reform is going to be something that's going to hit a lot of the people really hard. And I think when they take the hit, once that, well, the first budget was ridiculous, but once they pass what they're gonna pass in September, I think the combination of the health care, the taxes going up, I mean, everything is to help the rich. And I think that people in rural counties don't realize that yet.
It's an excellent point, and I completely agree with you, the fact that they don't get that yet. So one of the tactics has to be in one line that everybody can understand and talk to people with. How do you explain that? How do you explain that in one sentence? I don't have that answer right now, but that's one of the things you have to figure out in that tactic. Alex.
Alex Spencer, Clement Falls. Thank you. I think that language is incredibly important. The way we say things and what we say, and it's just as bad to say redneck as it is to say any other hippie. Exactly. Not to be. No matter who we're talking to or what we're saying, being open and being inviting and letting people tell their story to us so that we know where the connections are, how we can speak to them, and then educating ourselves in how to speak to whatever they need. I think that's what's most important.
That's very, very well stated and right on target. Thank you, Alex. That was good.
Yeah, Doug Walker, Grants Pass. I see sort of a common thread through some of it, and that's the preference to corporations and business over individuals. And I think that's a spot that we can hammer on with Walden.
Okay, good. Let's do two more, and then we're going to move forward. Charlotte, let's do you first.
Well, I'm Charlotte from Grants Pass, and I am really wondering what Greg Walden's history is about building a highway over to Coos Bay. Because if he rejected that when he was at the state level, and now he's putting a pipeline through, I think that's a huge thing that I just haven't done the research on.
And I guess I just have to say, I mean, I know that's a flashpoint for a lot of people in this room, and me as well. I wonder how that would play in the rest of the district, though, if that's a winning argument. Paula.
Yeah, Paula from Sisters. This all makes sense, but how do we counteract alternative news and Fox News? Yeah. That's all they listen to. They don't believe us.
I think the answer to that question is you have to get your messaging down. Simple explanations in simple sentences that are repeated over and over again that make sense, that drive your point home. And the other thing is you've got to take the time to get to know these folks. You've got to. I thought that what Alex said was exactly right. You've got to take the time to hear their stories and hear what they're saying, and then repeat their stories back to them, and not come out with your position right away. Just say, I just want to talk. I just want to learn where you're coming from. You know what your values are, the stuff that's important to you in your community. That's where those conversations start out, and that's also where the strategy chart comes in. So I'm going to do one more question, and then we're going to go to that. Who has their hand up who has not had a question yet? All right, I'll do two. We'll do Barbara and we'll do Bill. Maine, you've spoken already.
Barbara Fontaine from Powbutte in Cook County. Just a response to a comment made about District 2-wide issues and concerns. But there's something I've observed is that Prineville believes that it's the center of the universe, as does Grants Pass, and all of the others. So there need to be multiple messages.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. And that's where this comes in. Okay, last. Okay, Sarah, I'm going to give it to you.
Just really quick, I just wanted to mention before you hop into the strategy chart, we're going to spend all of tomorrow morning actually developing the strategy using a strategy chart. So just wanted to give that context. That as you all are listening to Rich explain kind of how we use these, that we're actually going to be using one tomorrow. So keep that in mind as you walk through these questions.
And therefore, I'm not going to spend much time on this. I'm going to use this for illustrative purposes only. Okay. Sarah's very, very good at this. She'll do a great job on it tomorrow. I encourage you to be there. Last question, Erin. Last comment or question.
Erin Vance, the Dalles. I think a big issue for rural District 2 is jobs. Yes. And I mean, a lot of people that I know, that's, they're counting on Trump giving them jobs. But, so I think some way to reach them in that capacity. It also ties to the other issues, healthcare, immigration.
So let's be clear about something we just did. We identified things that need to be addressed, but we didn't really talk about the tactics that we were going to use to do that.
Right.
That's how this time has been spent instead, was talking about the problems. You got to start focusing on the tactics. You got to start thinking about that and how to hone that down. Now, I want to talk about this very, very briefly. I told you that every campaign that I do a strategy chart. That's also when I'm trying to figure out how to influence people, right? I think the comment that was made about each community is different is absolutely true. Everybody thinks they're the center of the universe. You don't need one strategy for CD2. You need a strategy for each community and each county in this state. People in Grant County are frankly not going to have the same values as people in Deschutes County, or as even people in Jackson County. It's just not going to happen. So let's talk about how you do that. If I were going to do a strategy chart, let's pick a county. Let's say, pick a county for me. Jefferson County. Let's say Jefferson County, okay? So I'm going to look at where the votes are, and I'm going to look at where the people live, and I'm going to look at the voting patterns. And I'm going to try to figure out who in Prineville or I'm sorry, that's correct. So top. Thank you, Madison Hampshire. Figure out who the influential people are there, and before you go and talk to them, look into who they are. Find out who they are. If there is a minister or clergy and he or she has influence, maybe they have kids in the military. You want to talk about the vulnerability of Donald Trump? He promised not to drag us into any more wars. Yeah. We've lost soldiers in the last 4 days in 4 different countries that we were never in before, except Afghanistan, before that son of a bitch came to office. Pardon my language. Maybe that minister has a kid that is deployed. Maybe they've got a kid deployed to South Korea where you've got not one but 2 madmen with their fingers on nuclear weapons. You need to do that level of research on the decision makers in those areas, find out who they are and where they're at, so that when you have a conversation with them, you have this knowledge in your back pocket. And eventually, those are the kinds of things you can talk about. You know, for instance, I mean, you've got a kid deployed in Afghanistan. You've got a kid in Special Forces who may be in Somalia tonight, or Syria, or God knows where the hell they are. Donald Trump said he wasn't going to do that, and Greg Walden is behind that policy as well. How do you, as a parent, how do you feel about it? Yeah. You know, that kind of stuff. So there are various tactics that you can use, but you've got to identify the influence people in those counties, in those areas, in those towns, learn them, learn their issues, make them your friends. Okay, that's, Peter, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's the validators, I mean, you use the phrase validators
exactly.
in each community. The people, I think one example for those of you locally, is the Bates campaign against Dave Dauber, when Bates almost lost the first round, the second round he won by a lot. Why did he win by a lot? I think the campaign had the right tactics and they had validators. If you remember the TV and radio commercials, there was Bill Thorndike up there talking about Alan Bates, and other people in the community talked about Alan Bates, so it's very effective.
Jeff.
I'm Jeff from Ashland, and I just want to add one fork to that. Basically, we're talking about allies who will be listened to, messengers who will be listened to. I think influencers and formal and informal leaders are one track. The other track is your neighbors. And if we have a system, a matrix, where we are inviting 10, 12, 16 neighbors into our living rooms in an organized way, maybe with one video for discussion purposes, and they're all details. But basically, and as you say, drawing them out rather than preaching, we're going to be listened to. And I'm imagining that kind of an effort paired with the influencer tactic you're talking about.
I think it's a really good point, Jeff. Thank you. Okay, so and by the way, Sarah stepped on my line. I was going to go now. Just to follow up on that strategy chart, Sarah is going to be doing, and make sure you stick around for her. She's very, very good at what she does, and she'll be able to go into a lot more detail on this than I can possibly do right now or want to do. So this is a major campaign chart, and you can't even see it all, right? There's like boxes all over the damn place. Communications, fundraising, field operations, town coordinators, outreach people, data, research. It goes on and on. This is a congressional campaign. I designed this one for a supervisor campaign in San Diego County. Okay. Every single one of those boxes is going to have to be filled. A lot of them are going to have to be filled by volunteers. The top boxes are going to need to be filled by seasoned campaign professionals who know what they're doing, and that is going to take money. I'm not using this for intimidation purposes at all. We go into it knowing what a full-blown campaign looks like, and every single one of these people, the social media coordinator, the website coordinator, the event planner, the canvassing coordinator, everybody in every one of these boxes has tactics that they use, that they deploy to support the campaign plan to win the campaign. It is a very, very complicated, complex process that requires a lot of planning at the front end. The campaign plan and strategy is really, really key. That's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to finding out who your candidate's going to be and what the plan is going to be in terms of developing that strategy and hiring a staff to assist.
Will you give us a copy?
All of this will be available. I believe it will be available on video, Holly, to everyone who attended.
Jessica, would
Yes, we have this all on video, and I could also email you these charts if you'd like.
Yeah. So a couple of things, and I think this is really, really important. And this goes back to finding people of influence in the local communities, right? Town coordinators. Every town in this district of any size should have a town coordinator that works carefully with the campaign to help develop campaign events, outreach, all of that stuff. It's really, really key. Those are the people who know their communities. Choose those people carefully and make sure that you are charging them with modicums of responsibility that there's still control over. You don't want somebody as the Lone Ranger going out and shooting themselves in the foot and hurting the campaign. Because a town coordinator that thinks they're speaking on behalf of the campaign all of a sudden can find themselves quoted in the Oregonian, and then you've got some serious, serious issues. Okay, so again, this is just to give you a sense of it. Are there any general questions about this? I'm not going to spend much time on it because I want to move on to more Q&A and tactics. Please.
Are we only going to look at Democratic candidates?
Let's ask the Democratic Party and the indivisible heads.
I don't live in CD2. I can't answer.
Democrats are only looking at Democrats.
I think the real answer is we're looking at anybody and everybody right now.
We don't have anyone right now.
I mean, there's Jim Clary, and a lot of people don't think that he's capable of beating Greg Walden, but you know, I'm hoping that somebody really strong and winnable will emerge in the next couple of months. So
I'm in Klamath County, and we had this whole crazy thing with our state reps this year that ended up with really far-right people running against just right people.
I know. I used to live in Klamath County. I know those people.
So, and the people who were less right had to sometimes run on the Democratic ticket for sort of structural reasons, but they went around telling everybody, look, I'm not really a Democrat, you don't have to run as one to beat these other Republicans.
How'd that work out? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I don't know, I mean, I don't know anything, because I have no experience, but I think a moderate Republican would have a better chance of winning the county.
No doubt.
Sorry.
Tim.
I will give an example of what we did in a local election in the Mid-Columbia area. I have a friend who's worked a very long time at the community college. She is the coordinator for continuing ed. She does things like the elder hostel tours out in Eastern Oregon. Really, really active woman. Known her for years. She came to me last fall and said, the college is going down. I mean, it's 25% enrollment. 2 campuses, one in Hoover, one in the Dalles. They've split the board up in some. A lot of people consider it to be an illegal against state law to have the board represented the way it is. One county has voting advantage over the other. So basically, she says, "Who do you know?" And I polled several of my friends who run charitable organizations, non-violence, or preventative center against domestic violence. I just started calling people and I said, "Who do you know?" And then within 1 or 2 weeks, we had 35 names from the community, all coming from different sources and different backgrounds and experiences. We had people cold call them or sit down and take them to lunch and say, would you ever consider running? And then we said, if you do, we will support you. And we had a room full of people, the Dallas Progressives, Gorge Owned, which is a business consortium, saying, we will support you. We will be there. We know you've never run before, but the current board is from the Flat Earth Society. Nothing is happening. Nothing is changing. And you know what? We have 4 candidates.
You have a slate.
5. We have the 3 positions on the college board are now by new challengers. We have someone who went onto the Port Commission. We have someone in the school district. We have someone on the fire and safety board. So that's how you go. You start mining the community and you just cold call people.
And that's the farm team, and one of those guys may end up in Congress someday.
Yeah.
Lisa?
Again, Lisa Flexner from Bend. There's a really interesting analogous situation from a few years ago in Virginia when Eric Cantor was defeated. And if you haven't listened to it yet, I was listening to the podcast on the way over here of This American Life's most recent episode, The Beginnings of Now, all about how the Trump administration rose to power, what happened with Breitbart and all of that. But their first story is about how Eric Cantor was defeated. And it wasn't about the candidate. They said all they needed was a candidate who was slightly better than a hat stand, and they found one. Who talked policy, who talked policy over and over and over, and they met with him, and he was slightly better than a hat stand, and whenever he talked policy, everybody fell asleep. But the district and, at the time, Breitbart and a couple of other media influencers started talking about amnesty. And they captured the hearts and minds of folks in Virginia over immigration issues because Cantor was on board with an immigration reform. So they captured the hearts and minds on a single issue, and that single issue defeated Eric Cantor with a budget of $252,000 for his $3 million. It is doable. It's a great podcast to listen to how that strategy went and then flip it to the other side.
What was the program?
It's This American Life, and it's their most recent podcast. It's The Beginnings of Now. Sorry.
No. It's a great comment, and thank you for that link as well. I'm looking forward to hearing it myself for sure. Alex?
Alex Spencer, Klamath Falls. I just want to say that there is a little hope in Klamath County.
Sorry, I don't know, I'm meaning too dark.
Slightly. No, not at all. But they are voting, there's an ordinance right now, and I'm totally talking to the camera. It's fine. No, there's an ordinance right now that they're trying to put forth to ban smoking downtown, which of course I think is fantastic, but not everybody does. And so at the end of this meeting of the city council, one of the old guard read something that he had written, this diatribe about, we really are a conservative community, which means we're getting in there. Yeah. You know, we are making a difference. You know, we just elected one of the guys who was instrumental in getting weed legal in Oregon as one of our city councilmen. So we're moving.
So, thanks, Alex. So I want to get back to tactics because we've only got about 20 minutes, and we haven't really borne down on what a tactic specifically looks like. So is this about tactics?
It is, I think. I wanted to know if it's ever feasible that you try to field somebody that runs against
Sorry, can't hear.
but also.
Could you please stand up and tell us your name and where you're from?
And say it louder and say it again.
Sue Newberry, I'm from Ashland, and I've been curious about whether it's realistic to run a Republican in the primary against Walden, because I've noticed what fights those cause, and also be behind a Democrat. Do we have to be behind just one?
So I'll answer that question for that's not a tactic, by the way, well, it could be, but I'll go ahead and answer that question. It's always a good idea to have Republicans running against Republicans. Always. More people, more better. In some of my campaigns, I have actually been known to feed a little bit of money to some of the most obnoxious right-wing assholes you've ever met in your life to get them to file just to have their names on the ballot, knowing they were going to drain off 2 or 3 or 4%. The straight answer to that question is yes, and that actually is a tactic. correct myself and apologize for that. Okay, so I want to talk about tactics, and I want to use, and what I want to do is, this is great, this is storytelling, and this is fun, right? So, Peter's got some stories, I bet. I've got some stories. There's some elected officials in here that have got some stories. I bet a guy from the Democratic Party has some stories, and I bet that people from statewide and national leaders will do as well. So let's talk about a tactic that I used in a campaign recently. I ran an Assembly District special election in California last year, 8031. It's an area of extreme, it's in the Central Valley, Fresno, extreme poverty, lack of access to clean drinking water, horrible air quality, highest child asthma rate in the country. It is a health catastrophe. My candidate was Joaquin Lambula, ER doc, first-time candidate, but an ER doc from a well-known Latino family in the Valley, married, 3 daughters, great profile, and he was teachable. He knew what he did not know, and he took instruction and was able to be taught well. The opponent was a sitting Fresno City councilman, a former right-wing talk show host. Popular in his district. Now, this was a special election, and special elections always favor Republicans. Who can tell me why? Because they turn out, that's right. And they don't just turn out in presidential election years, they turn off in off years too, when a lot of progressives are sitting their asses complaining about life as it is and waiting for the next presidential candidate to come along. Republicans vote. So it was stacked against us from the very, very beginning. And initial polling showed us down by about 22 points. I had money to work with in this campaign. It was really fun. So I hired a very, very good opposition research team and had them go through and do all the standard stuff. And it turned up all the standard stuff we'd expect. Speeding tickets, marital problems, little domestic violence here, you know, a couple issues here and there, pissed off ex-wife, the stuff that you would typically expect to find. And that had potential for being used in campaign ads. But I knew there had to be more, so I had them go back for a second round, and I made these poor people listen to every single radio show this guy had done for the last 3 years, and every single television interview. Opposition research is freaking drudgery, man. It is boring, horrible stuff. It's like mining a minefield until you find the one nugget.
Oh, yeah.
And we found the nugget. This guy said, and remember, this is an area of extreme poverty with a high Latino population. I believe clean air and clean water are luxuries. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are all people are entitled to. I saw that, and man, it was Christmas morning. We immediately went out and bought up every single piece of drive time radio on the right-wing radio station in Fresno and the Latino station in Fresno, and we ran those 15-second ads until we were sick of hearing about it. They were on like every hour, every day, all the time. Little Olivier believes that clean water is a luxury. And we did a mailer. If you believe and we did this to Republicans and Latinos. If you believe that clean water is not a luxury, then stopping Clint Olivier is a necessity. We hung this around that poor son of a bitch's neck, and we watched the polls change. Now, why did we do it for Republicans? Why did we do it for Republicans? We knew that we weren't going to change their minds and vote for us, so why would we have run those ads on right-wing radio and sent the mailer out to Republicans?
Other people would vote.
Discourage them from voting.
Thank you. Voter suppression. That's exactly the idea. Republicans are really, really good at it, and Democrats really aren't.
Yeah.
But this really worked because we also have the money to do great polling. Celenda Lake was our polling company, and we could actually see the likely Republican voters drop as soon as those mailers and those ads hit. Likely Republican voters dropped by 14%. And in 2 weeks, the polls shifted by 18 points. We went on to win that election by 9 points. I'm going to tell you one other one, and then I'm going to turn it over to other folks, because this is, and there are people, and I say this sometimes, and I always get a couple people shaking their heads going, boy, that's horrible. This guy was easily shaken. If you got him off of his game, he couldn't get back on his thought process. And he spouted lies just like Donald Trump was, speaking bullshit as truth. I mean, very, very simply and very, very easily. And so we had 7 debates, and I parked myself either the front or the first or the second row in every single debate. And every time he would say something like that, I would start laughing at him. Not really loudly, but it totally got into his head. I mean, it totally got into his head. There was a televised debate and a radio debate, and I did that, and at one point he broke away and said, "That's right, Mr. Laughing Man, that's the truth." Now that's a shitty thing to do to somebody, isn't it? Too bad. Politics is blood sport, right? You find a weakness on an opponent, you got to stick that knife in and you got to turn it. It's not the time to be sensitive, it's not the time to be nice, right? When you find that opponent's weak spot, you got to go for it.
So what's Walden's?
Pull your punches with the public, but go directly after the candidate. Yes?
Yeah, what do you think is Walden's weak spot?
Personally, I think his association with Trump and his and the fact that he promised that there would be that he would never vote for anything that didn't cover all pre-existing conditions, and he just did that. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? Right? Back to, no, I want to do tactics. Got to do tactics. Gotcha. Peter, favorite tactic that you use?
Favorite tactics. We did a lot with the House Democrat campaign. We would always do the opposition research. We'd always try to find that weakness. We always try to position our candidate as the champion of that district. It was pretty straightforward. And the validators were the ones that we used effectively in the swing districts. The other thing, a tactic that we always used too, is looking at the numbers and being clear about the numbers. In this congressional district, the numbers are in Jackson County, Deschutes County, and Hood River County. That's where the numbers are. And when I ran my campaign, I stupidly, against Walden, I wanted to be in every county and travel to every county. And looking back on it, I thought I should have stayed in Jackson County, Deschutes County, and Hood River County. I should have pounded them over and over and over again instead of dispersing myself all over the place. So, looking at the numbers and paying attention to them.
And he only won in Hood River County by 5 votes.
I saw that. That was pretty funny. Sarah, you got a favorite tactic in a campaign you've run?
Field organizing. I love canvassing, I love phone banking, I love person-to-person contact and making connections with people and building community, and that's what field organizing does for us.
Jeff, how about you?
Well, I get back again and again. You know, my general feeling is we need to pay attention to how disconnected people's beliefs, or what people say their beliefs, and their voting behavior is these days. And so there's this whole discussion we should have about attitudes and positions in the second district and how to address them and how to frame them. But that's one half. The other half is exposing people to messengers they believe in, almost no matter what the message is. Because, you know, if you talk to the man on the street interviews with Trump voters show that people voted against their stated beliefs again and again and again. And I'm kind of afraid of going too far to trying to fit our tactics and strategy to the reported polled positions of people in the second district. And I'm more interested in balancing that with an organization where almost every voter is exposed to someone who wants to defeat Walden, who they will listen to.
Yep, it's a really, really good point. Ron, you've been around a lot of campaigns. What's a favorite tactic you've seen?
Well, I'm a field guy. Oh yeah, sorry. I'm Ron Morgan from the Democratic Party of Oregon, and I'm an old field guy. I got my start in community organizing and wasn't a poli-sci major. I don't care about policy. And people are asking about, people are asking about polls, and your best poll is talking to your canvasser.
Yes.
You know, because they're going to be speaking to voters at the door. They'll tell you what they think. And, you know, that feeds right into what you were saying, Jeff. You know,
And by the way, to Ron's point, whenever I've been involved, this is probably the last campaign I'm going to run, by the way, but every campaign I've ever run or I've ever been involved with, we did just that, which a lot of campaigns don't. There was time at the end of the night for a complete download from the canvassers, what they're hearing, what people at the door are saying. Campaigns ignore that to their own peril.
It's a continuous focus group.
Yes, that's a good point.
It's the best poll you can buy. That's Bill.
I'm Bill Trumbull from Redmond. I think a tactic whose time has come, even though politics is a blood sport, is now to return to civility and truth.
Good luck.
Good luck with that. Here. I'm not going to run your campaign.
Josefina for
tactic we used from Greg Delgado was housing. We have a big problem housing in Central Oregon, and that was the tactic we used. Well, Greg Delgado, he don't win, but he did a really good job.
And what was the tactic that he used on housing specifically? What was the message?
Because the rents are so expensive.
Yes.
We live in a town, there are like rich people and people is working.
We're all starting to live in that town, though.
Yeah. And the rents are so high. We find one woman, she said she rented in a place that when she started renting was a house less than $100,000. And the house now is almost $1 million, and she need to pay the rent like he live in $1 million house, and it's not $1 million house. Yeah.
So we've got about 4 minutes left. Anyone else want to talk on tactics?
I just want to kind of prefer on Josefina's point. I'm Dasha Dolan. We had a visit with Golden Staff yesterday, 7 people. It was covered in Mail Tribune.
Louder, please.
We talked healthcare, obviously, but also one point that we brought up, we had great homelessness problem in the Rock Valley, and we wanted to keep Walden accountable because he's aligning himself with Trump. Trump spends $3 million on one visit to Mar-a-Lago. I started volunteering for Tiny Village, and I photographed one little house that cost $3,000 to put together. Peggy, who was speaking during our visit to Walden, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. She was a CPA, so she figured out that for $3 million, we could have 10,000 little homes here in Rock Valley. And Troy Ferguson, the manager of the staff there, his jaw just dropped down. We can illustrate these points, and Walden is standing behind this, and we have people here who are
develop a tactic around it. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. We got time for about 2 more. Ma'am?
Mimi Trumbull from Redmond, and around 2004, we elected the first woman to New Hampshire to Congress from the state of New Hampshire. One of the tactics we encouraged everybody who was volunteering with the campaign was to do a whisper campaign. In other words, you're standing in line at the grocery store, think of a way to talk about her opponent negatively, and people in line just go, and people did this at their church, at the library, anywhere they could. They just vocally supported our candidate. And
it's like the progressive equivalent of fake news, right?
People got comments back like, well, I didn't know he did that. It can help. It's small, but it can help.
That's very interesting.
It is. We probably have time for one more. Anyone that has not had their hand up yet? Trish.
Trish Metzger from Phoenix. I just think, and many of these items that people have already brought up really go to mind, which is we have to attach our values, which the Trump campaign is such a horrific event that we can call them every name in the book. The trick is trying to extract the profanity with others, but to marry their policies and their actions to our human values and our humanity is this a humane action? That to me is the tactic, is to message that way.
But it has to be one that resonates with your audience. For you to tell them how you feel internally, they don't care. Respectfully, they don't care.
But they can relate to the fact, perhaps on healthcare, that I'm paying an exorbitant amount for my insulin, or I'm paying, or they are.
Or they have a kid who has a pre-existing condition that's not going to be covered.
Right. And most of us by the age of 50 have a pre-existing condition. If we fall off of one particular policy, we would be booted. I've struggled with that.
Okay, we're going to need to deal in this. We have all weekend to continue the conversation.
Give this guy a round of applause.